Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and today we're talking about my top 10 card drafting board games. These are games that are going to have some mechanism where you'll have a pool of cards, whether it be a hand or something else. You'll be picking a card from every round or turn or something, and then you're going to be taking actions using those cards or scoring with them. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the list with one honorable mention. So the honorable mention here is Res Arcana. Now Res Arcana is a wonderful Tom Lemon design where you are going to be creating this tableau in front of you by playing artifact cards as well as using the effects of the different mages and hopefully reaching these places of power. Now this game is very tight when it comes to the resource management as well as the system itself, because during the beginning of the game you're going to be constructing a deck with only, I think it's like 8 or 10 cards, but it's a very small deck, and you're going to start the game with about a third of those cards and you're going to be drawing one every round. You'll have other ways to draw cards, so you have lots of options to dig into this deck. But the reason that it barely missed this list is because the card drafting only happens at the very start of the game. Now that is super fine because I really like how it's done, because you're going to have all of the information on the table kind of available to you. You're going to see the different places of power and things that you can work towards. You're going to have a couple of mages that you can work from, and then you're going to draft 4 at a time. So you'll have 4 cards, pick one pass, pick one pass, pick one pass until the first 4 are gone, then you'll draw 4 more. So you get to not see everything, so there's a bit of strategy, and that drafting, that initial setup is going to set you up for the entire game, and I think it's done extremely well. So this is a fantastic design. I love Res Arcana, but it barely missed this list because the drafting is a variant, but I do think that's the way to play, but it only does happen at that very beginning of the game. So that is my honorable mention, Res Arcana, amazing design. Let's go ahead and start the list with number 10, Inish. Inish has you playing as a bunch of Celtic leaders that are all vying for the crown of the land. Now the way you do this is through 2 specific phases. You have a drafting cards phase, then you're going to use the cards you drafted to make some changes to the board, building it out, putting pieces all around, but the card play is really what matters. And it's got a great mechanism where you're actually playing the cards to do an action, or you can pass on your turn. However, if everybody passes, the round is immediately over and any unused cards are lost. You also have ways to add cards to your hand with these special tails cards, and they're extremely powerful, and you can hold them from round to round, so you can use them in very specific niche situations, but they're extremely strong. Now my favorite part about this game has to be the drafting mechanism itself. I love how during the drafting phase you're going to start with 4 cards, you keep one past the rest, but then when you get your new hand of 3, you're going to add your last card to it, and then you're going to pick 2 cards from there and then pass the rest. So you can kind of modulate and change your hand as you play and kind of change your strategy based on the cards that you see. So you have a bit of tactical approach to this as well as long-term strategy. So I really like the drafting system in this game, and it also is just absolutely stunning to look at. This was on my most recent best board game artworks. Whew, I love this approach with this awesome psychedelic artwork telling the tales of Celtic mythology. So that's my number 10, Inish. My number 9 is going to go to the game Paper Tales, a small engine building game that is played over 4 rounds, and in each round you're going to be putting out these cards in front of you. Now these cards all have different traits, a cost to play them, the strength that they provide, and when you play them you either put them in the front of your city and you'll use their combat power to fight, or you put them in the back of your city and they'll just provide their effects. The different effects consist of things like providing resources, and some cards even have multiple effects that'll trigger based on the phases of the game. Now my favorite part about this game has to be the combo potential and just the usability of the game. So the game is very clear on what things do. They'll tell you exactly what phase something happens in, and then the effect of that creature. And then you also will have potential combos with the different cards you draft. I like how easy it is to read and how clear things are, and I also really enjoy the aging mechanic. So as you play this game, at the end of every round, each of your characters will age. You'll get an age token on them. But if a character already had an age token, it dies. So over these years, each of these ages basically represents like 50 years. So after every 100 years, a person dies of just old age. And I really like this mechanic. There's lots of ways that you can manipulate things, some benefit based on ages, and sometimes you just don't care and you're just ditching cards just to ditch cards. But I think it's really neat that you can put a lot of money into a character card and see it pay off for a long time. So I really like this system. It's a great one to play, and I love the kingdom building in it. So that's Paper Tales, my number 9. My number 8 is going to go to the game Isle of Cats. Isle of Cats has you playing as a bunch of people rescuing cats from an island that is about to be invaded by the evil Vesh. So it's your job to do your best to take these cats and assort them onto your boats. Now the cats are actually polyominoes, but the way you score not only comes from the cats that you take, but also through the cards you draft. So at the start of each round, you're going to get a hand of a lot of cards, and you get to pick 2 at a time. And each of these cards is either going to give you the ability to rescue cats, get some treasure, or score extra points. And that is my favorite thing about this game, are the additional scoring cards cards. So for example, you have some examples here: 4 points per unspent fish. So maybe you just want a bunch of money by the end of the game. 3 points per cat not touching any treasure. So maybe you don't get any treasure this game. I love how you can kind of choose the path that you want to take based on the cards you're getting, but by doing so and by chasing after points, you're getting less of the resources to score. It almost gives me a more thinky feeling of something like Point Salad, where you are choosing between scoring and the actual resources to let you score. And I think this is a wonderful mechanism, and I love the fact that you actually get to pick 2 cards at a time, because you can really build something based on the hand that you're dealt. So I love the way that this game flows, and I love how new scoring and new challenges can pop up as you play, and so you can make this game as difficult or as streamlined as you would like. So I really like this one. That is Isle of Cats, my number 8. Now my number 7 is going to go to Seven Wonders, and this is the classic drafting game where you're going to be playing as civilizations. It's your job to get resources to pay for your cards in order to be successful in science, combat, and your own special thing, building that wonder. Now, my favorite part about this game are the cards themselves. I love the layout of the cards, I love how they work, and I love how the drafting works. Whenever you get a card, you have a couple of options. You either play it for its effect, paying any cost required, and when you do that, you can borrow from your neighbors, which is such a cool mechanic. And then the other thing you can do is you can ditch it for cash. So maybe your neighbors are looking for specific cards, boom, it's gone. And the last thing, which I think is really clever, is you actually can stick it under your personal player board as a wonder construction piece. And so they provide you lots of different benefits, from things like points to resource production to special abilities that are just kind of insane. So I really like this system. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's so clean to play. The new edition has changed some of the iconography in the game, so it's actually easier to see how things link, but ultimately this is a wonderful package that is Seven Wonders, amazing drafting game. Up next, we have Coloretto, a very small packaged game that's all about picking piles of chameleons. The clever twist in this game is you are trying to get as many of the same type of chameleon, but you do not want to go wide. You want to make sure that you're only getting 3 sets, because any set beyond 3 is going to be negative points. And the way that this game is done is very clever. On your turn, you either draw a card and place it into one of these piles, and each pile can hold 3, or you take one of the piles, and however many chameleons end up being there. So you can either go early to ensure you get what you want, or you can be a bit more risky and add more chameleons to the piles. Now, generally, you just want more chameleons because it gives you more choices, but getting specific piles and knowing when to take them is super rewarding. Now, my favorite part about this game is the simplicity and ease of play, but also that tense choice. Every time that you play a card, that's a hard decision on where to put it. Every time that you're picking a boat, you have to decide, oh man, is this one that I really want? Is it worth the negative points? Or do I even take it right now because I want to try to get that maximum value? You have some big choices here in a small package. This is such a good, clean design. That's Coloretto, my number 6. Number 5 is going to go to Ginkopolis. Now, Ginkopolis is a city building game where not only are you building up, but you're also building out. And you're going to be doing this through this clever drafting system. So on your turn, you're going to be using one of the cards in your hand, and you'll be discarding it to do an effect. So you either will discard it in order to gain the resources printed on it, so tiles or resources, or if it's a letter, you're going to be using it to build out on this large map. And these maps have these tiles, so you'll be taking a tile from hand and building out the board. Or you can discard the number and actually build on top of the tile that it says. And to do so, you need to play a tile that's larger or make up the difference in points. So there's some really cool ideas here, and I love that the way the drafting works in this game. You're going to get a hand of 4 cards, and you use one of those cards, but the other 3 you don't take are going to go to the other player, and then they'll draw a new card to replace it. So you get to kind of see what is coming up. You can make plans and anticipate actions of your opponents based on the 3 cards you passed, because you know that at least one of those is going to get back to you, and you know that those cards are not in the deck as well. So it's kind of interesting to be able to make future plans based on all this information and actually know those are going to come true. Based on what your opponents pick, you'll know exactly what's going to happen. Now, my favorite part about this game has to be the cards themselves. I love that you get some starting resources as well as special abilities through these assistant cards, as well as during the game, whenever you overbuild a tile, the card that you overbuild is actually going to stay in front of you because that tile's no longer the game. It can't do anything, and that's such a clever mechanism because now you have a special ability. Like these 2 tiles here will give you extra points for the number of cards or the number of abilities with this effect, or you might also get points from the amount of a specific type of card, or just the number of total cards you have, or the amount of resources you have on specific tiles. Or you can build your engine, so whenever you take a specific type of action, you get more resources during the game. There's just a lot of clever things happening here, and building your own personal engine based on your plays throughout the game is just extremely satisfying and rewarding. So that's my number 5, Ginkopolis. Number 4 is Seven Wonders Duel. In this game, you're doing the same thing as the original Seven Wonders. You're building up a civilization by using resources and doing lots of different things with science, military, and the special abilities of your wonders. When you take a card, you can play it, you can sell it, or you can use it to build a wonder. So very similar structure, but the drafting in this game is so fascinating. So every round you're going to be setting up a pyramid that looks something like this. And on your turn, you're going to be picking one that is revealed and not covered by any cards. So you have some idea of what's coming up and what routes to take. There are some abilities that make you take extra turns or do special effects, and so you could do some cool combos if you're trying to reach specific cards. But the really icing on the cake here is there is a threat of an instant win condition, and I think that's my favorite part in this game, is that there's always a way that you can come back from behind, and that's through science and military. The way the military works is you have this lane, and as you play, you're moving down this lane, and if you get all the way in, you just win immediately. And same thing with science. If you get all 6 different science symbols, you just win the game flat out. So there's always that threat that, ooh, do I take this card because it's good for my engine or good for what I'm doing, or do I take this just to ensure that I'm not going to get beat by this specific thing? There's a lot of choices to consider with every card you take. And on top of that, the wonders in this game are just so well done. I love that they're one-time effects, and it's almost like a race to these wonders because those effects are first come, first serve, and the first person to make their last wonder basically ensures that the other player will not get to use their 4th, because there can only be 7 wonders and each player has 4. So there's a lot of neat stuff going on here. One that I really enjoy, 7 Wonders, is just a wonderful design and a great implementation of a 2-player version of the original drafting game, and I enjoy it more. So that's 7 Wonders Duel, my number 4. My number 3 is going to go to the game Terraforming Mars. Now, this is a game where you play as a bunch of corporations doing your best to terraform the planet of Mars. And you're doing this by doing projects. So the projects come in the form of cards. During the drafting version, every round you're going to get 4 cards. You'll be picking one, passing until you have assembled a hand of 4. And then each of those cards you have to decide right then and there, are they worth keeping in your hand? For each card you keep, $3. Now that seems very small, but as you play and if you've played this game, you'll know that's a big commitment. Keeping a whole hand of cards is $12, and you have all your cards from like the last couple rounds, so will you ever get to these? Who knows? So you have to make those snap decisions, and it feels so satisfying when you see your decisions bear fruit. This is such a satisfying engine building game of incremental upgrades, bonuses, and big turns, and fun powers and abilities. You have these green cards that are going to give you passive bonuses, usually in the form of income or resources or tiles on the board. You're also going to have these blue cards that'll get you special effects that you can continuously trigger, and then you'll have these red cards that are super powerful events that generally will do something amazing on the board. I really like the flow of this game. I love the system. The engine building is satisfying. The card evaluation is super satisfying, and the theme is so rock solid. My favorite part about this game are the cards. I mean, you can't get around it. You're going to be making those decisions, and it's really going to impact your game. It can be a bit random with the cards you get, but the drafting is so critical and does such a good job at curbing that randomness because you can actually pick the cards that are going to be good for your corporation. It feels great. It's such a satisfying game. That's my number 3, Terraforming Mars. My number 2 is going to go to the game Capital X 2 Generations, an area control game that's abstract into cards, where you're going to be using these cards in order to take control of districts. Each district has a card set that represents it in the middle of the table that is known as the capital. At the end of the round, you're going to be checking the cards in front of you, and you have to be under or equal to that number. However, whoever is the highest in that section is going to take a card from that capital and score it as extra bonus points at the end. If you're ever too high past the capital scoring, then you are going to bust and lose all of your cards in that section. This game is so fantastic, so fascinating. So the way the game works is during the drafting phase, you're going to get a hand of 6 cards. And the cards themselves are just numbers and colors, because during the game, each of those colors is going to be assigned a special ability. You have these tiles here that make the game variable each time you play. So for example, yellow, when you play it, you get an extra turn. The pink one can potentially explode all of the other districts, including itself, and get rid of the lowest card in each one, which can kind of mess up the numbers. So you have some really fascinating effects that are tied to the cards. So at the start of each round, you're going to be drafting 6 of them. You'll take 2 at a time so you can form a strategy and see what other people are doing. Then you play. On your turn, you play a card in the capital to trigger an effect, or in front of you to score, and you get to see those dominoes fall. This is such a tight, satisfying, tense game with super fun powers and abilities that change as you play, change every time, super enticing, and have great combinations with the way they work together. This is just such an amazing design, such an amazing game, and one that I continuously pull out, continuously enjoy. A masterpiece. This is Capital X 2 generations. And my number one card drafting game has to go to Blood Rage. Blood Rage is a game where you are taking part in Ragnarok. The world is ending, so it's your job to go out in a blaze of glory, whether it be through battle or fulfilling the quests of the gods that are witnessing the cataclysmic event. So you're going to be doing this through a drafting phase in 3 ages. Each age, you get a deck of cards that is specific to that age that levels up in power as the game plays. So age 1 has some medium strength cards, 2 has some very awesomely powerful cards, and 3's cards are just amazing over the top. Oh my gosh, so many good cards. Now the cards themselves come in different categories as well. You have monsters, creatures that you can play that will fight for you from age to age. You have quests that will give you extra clan stat bumps and points and objectives to go for. Or you'll have battle cards that you can use to win key battles. Or you can even get upgrades that will change the way you play. This game is all about the cards, and during that drafting phase, you pick one and you're going to end with 6, and each card you take is strong. Each card you take is one that you want to use, want to play. And then we actually get to the phase where you're moving around and using these cards. It's all about how you play them and your timing. The game is short. The game is tense. On your turn, you get to do one thing, and you have to really commit and say, ooh, do I play this upgrade card now, or do I make sure to get my pieces on the board? Do I try to go for the things on the board, or do I upgrade myself? It's such a difficult situation because anything could happen at any time. Players can attack. Players can jump into conflicts. This is just so well done because you have these 6 cards, and it's your job to see how you can play them the best as possible during the round. Such a tense experience, such a fantastic game, and my favorite part about this game has to be the upgrade cards. So whether it be the monster upgrades where you get to control these massive creatures and they're yours, and they've got such a big, amazing presence, both power-wise and miniature-wise on the board, but also upgrading your characters to get special effects that really make yourself stand out. This is an absolute wonderful design and one that I continuously love playing. I love the crazy card combos that exist in the game, and then kind of understanding and figuring out how to defeat those combos or use them to the best of your ability. This is such an incredible game, incredible experience. You're always engaged. I love Blood Rage. Oh man, amazing game. That's my number one, Blood Rage. And that's the list. Those are my top 10 card drafting board games. What are yours? Do you agree with any of the ones I put on this list? What ones are you excited to try, or have you heard a lot of good things about? I'd love to hear your opinions, and just in general, what do you think? But thank you so much for watching SideGame Strong.